This episode of the Cult Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, listen to up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, or give us something to discuss in our new post-credit scenes at the end of each episode, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture. Welcome to the Cult Popture podcast.
No, what's going on?
Oh, the world's ending. Nothing's clear anymore. It's no one's sure what they're supposed to do. Hey, Richard, we are coming to you, the listener, Richard and I, from the midst of a nationwide lockdown. Have we recorded a lockdown podcast yet, or was that just
no? So our last podcast came out mere hours before this level 4 was announced, as it's called. Only a few days earlier, there had been a alert level system had been announced, where alert level 1 is like this is all about the coronavirus, COVID-19.
If you're listening to this in 2 years and they're like, what are they talking about?
Yeah, they it's strange times. So at the time we were at alert level 2, which is just like oldies, stay at home, don't go out if you can avoid it. Maybe if you can, work from home. And then after recording that podcast, we got raced into level 4, which is stay the fuck home.
Yes. But hey, look.
Perfect podcasting.
Exactly. This is the time when we as podcasters actually need to shine. We are shouldering the responsibility of entertainment now.
And so what are we going to do? We've got 4 weeks of nothing but time. How are we going to 4 weeks minimum?
Yeah.
What are we going to do? Are we going to provide any extra content for our listeners?
Maybe. You wanted to do a couple of... No? Okay. Well, we just thought we'd keep doing the regular podcast then, just to keep you comp.
Well, that's the thing, we don't want to make people uncomfortable by adjusting their schedule in any way. No, I'm sure. Keep your eyes peeled. I'm sure there'll be something extra we'll be doing. Yeah, we've thought about doing little like watch parties of a film, maybe host it on our Discord.
Yeah, jump on the Discord, everybody. There's a link to the Discord in the show notes. If you don't know what a Discord is, it's kind of like Reddit meets MSN Messenger, where you can chat to us. So head on over there. We should start doing our plugs at the start of the show.
Yeah.
Because people just stop listening halfway through.
Yeah, but
get on the Discord. Yeah,
because we did a little test the other night to see if it would be feasible. Still working that out, but no. I mean, if you guys have any ideas for extra content we could provide you, because I mean, we actually both are still working. You're working from home, but I'm working. I'm having to go into the office as an essential worker. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, half my days I've got nothing to do.
Yeah. So we are going to continue on Film Franchise Fortnights, which is what this is, where we watch a film franchise every fortnight. So we're continuing on through our tragic trek through the James Bond franchise, and I use the word tragedy in how you would use the word tragedy in the drama, Richard, which is inevitable failure. knowing you're going to die, and yet you still keep going. That is what the dramatic interpretation of the word tragedy means. And I say that, of course, because the whole reason we started doing James Bond was to tie in to No Time to Die in April, and turns out it's been pushed to November because of what I'm starting to think of as not a very good thing to happen to the world, Richard. Coronavirus. The coronavirus. One of many. But this is the... If coronavirus is Marvel, COVID-19 is Thor Ragnarok.
So it's
I'm not making... Well, I'm not making any kind of I'm not talking about the movies themselves. It's more like, what's the difference as you explained to me? Was it on Patreon or was it just last week?
I
I think
can't
it was just
remember.
on the last podcast.
It's
That
since then I'm not
coronavirus.
even sure that I was correct.
I've been telling everybody what you told me, so I hope it is. Anyway,
because I saw another kind of description, but I think it's like,
Richard, I've just been telling so many people that COVID-19 is a type of coronavirus.
so I think it's like
I'm gonna have to send out
coronavirus
an
gives
email.
you the strain of coronavirus gives you COVID-19.
It's like AIDS and HIV.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's less interesting. Anyway,
I
all
don't
right.
know.
Well, this
Tune
this
in next week for another description of the difference between coronavirus and COVID-19.
this week we're going to forget about that for the next hour and a half to 2 hours. Yeah, let's not talk about it again through this episode because people want a distraction.
Looks down at my notes. Oh god.
Looks at hand. It says it's coronavirus, and then
I've got
bullet points under coronavirus for different talking points.
I've just got 2 hours of fucking coronavirus jokes.
So this week
Wait, can I just get one of them out of the way?
Yes.
So, it's got the same name as the beer. What's that about?
Oh shit. This week we're up to our penultimate Bond episode, Richard, as we discuss
That's the pod vid for the week.
the penultimate Bond. This week we're discussing Pierce Brosnan's 4-film run as the character. So he portrayed Bond in GoldenEye in 1995, Tomorrow Never Dies in 1997, The World Is Not Enough in 1999, and Die Another Day in 2002. Brosnan was brought on after having been previously rejected for the role to replace Timothy Dalton, who ended up bowing out after his contractually obligated third film struggled through development hell due to legal disputes over the Bond film rights.
You made it sound like struggled through development hell was the name of his third film.
It was. I'm probably not going to get into it too much more than just legal disputes. I know just today, actually, on Discord, Brent was like, do you know how Pierce Brosnan became Bond? And you're like, no, I didn't look it up because I wanted AJ's running the episode. I don't know what he's talking about. I just thought I just thought they went to him after Dalton bowed out.
Wasn't there's the whole thing about Remington Steele and how he wasn't allowed to...
Broccoli, who again is the name of the man, not the vegetable, didn't want Bond to be played by a current TV actor, which Pierce Brosnan at the time of The Living Daylights was. But by 1995, by GoldenEye, he was no longer Remington Steele, and so they brought him on. I don't know if that's what Brent was talking about. Maybe it was. So the 6-year gap between License to Kill and GoldenEye made a lot of people lose faith in that the series would continue. And considering how much the world... This is real interesting, actually. I never thought about this. Considering how much the world had changed politically between 1989 and 1995 with the fall of the Berlin Wall, the dissolution of the Soviet Union, and the end of the Cold War, some in the film industry felt it would be futile for the Bond series to make a comeback at all, and that it was best left as an icon of the past.
Wow. They were right.
Yeah. No, they weren't. Well, they were in a sense because the producers, who at this time was like Barbara Broccoli, so Albert Broccoli's daughter, they were considering new concepts for the series by this point. A lot of the stuff you still hear bandied around today as Daniel Craig comes to the end of his run as the character. People saying things like a period piece set in the 1960s, a female 007, a black James Bond. Radical ideas, Richard. But they decided ultimately that they should return to the basics of the series, which seems like, I don't know why you'd need to reach that decision. It seems like it's just ignoring the other opportunities.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like inaction is not like a choice.
Yeah.
It's just like
So Dalton was actually coaxed into returning in 1993. You're laughing at coaxed. You don't like?
No, Dalton.
Dalton. Timothy Dalton. Timothy Dalton was coaxed into returning in 1993, but jumped ship after not being able to commit to more than one other movie. He was like, nah, I don't want to do a fourth one. I only want to do a third one. And Albert Broccoli, who at the time was serving as
who at the time was alive.
He was alive. He was serving as a role called presenter in the credits, apparently, of GoldenEye. He was like, if you're coming back after a 6-year break to continue playing Bond, you've got to play him in more than one movie. And he was like, nah, I don't want to do any more.
Right.
So he jumped ship. And Albert Broccoli's company, which I only just found out through this research, his company's name was Dan Jacques. It looks like an Indian word, like
How do you spell it?
Danjaq, Danjaq, Dan Jacques.
Interesting.
So his company was what the lawsuit was about, because Dan Jacques sued MGM for the rights. But he oversaw GoldenEye during this time. He died in 1996, so a year after the release of GoldenEye.
That ought to show him, eh?
Yeah. A lot of the several of the key creative team had already passed on by this point too, as we talked about with License to Kill. And Desmond Llewellyn, who had played the role of Q since the Connery era, he passed away after The World Is Not Enough, Brosnan's fourth film, meaning that the Brosnan era actually represents like a pretty tangible transition, like a changing of hands, in the franchise's long history, as it's like inherited by the next generation. And as stuffy and angry as like boomers get when people our age proudly proclaim that Casino Royale is the best James Bond movie. I mean, when you look at it like this, it kind of makes a bit more sense that it's like it's the passing on of some very old men, what they considered good storytelling to a new generation. And by new, I mean 2 years after I was born. But it's still, these are the people who still control it now. And it's like, I don't know. I think that makes it make a little more sense when you say that Bond movies are better now than they were, because it's like, yeah, I mean, loads of movies are better now than other movies from the 60s, so why would Bond be any different?
I'm just trying to find what Brent could have been talking about when he said, that the way he was cast is crazy. And so apparently Brosnan first met Broccoli, not the vegetable, the man,
okay, thank you
on
for
the set
clarifying.
of For Your Eyes Only, because his first wife was in that film.
Okay.
And then apparently Broccoli was like, fuck, if he can act, he's the guy to replace Roger Moore. And then Remington Steele got cancelled and he was offered the role of James Bond, but because everyone's like, fuck, this guy's going to play Bond, I better watch Remington Steele, it got so popular they renewed it.
Yeah, we talked about that last week. Yeah.
And then so he couldn't do Bond because he had to do that.
Yep.
So I guess that's it.
Nice.
That's pretty
All right,
fun.
well, 1995, Richard, GoldenEye, directed by Martin Campbell. First time Martin Campbell, but not the last time he directed a film for the series. You know this and I know this, but he's a Kiwi director, which makes me feel like during this time of isolation, anyone know how to reach out to Martin Campbell? Fuck, let's have a chat with him. I bet you we can get a hold. I bet it wouldn't even be that hard. We're just gonna figure out how to contact him. He's
based in the UK these days.
Is he? Okay,
Yeah.
maybe it might be a bit more difficult then. Brosnan later described Martin Campbell as warrior-like in his take on the piece, and that there was a huge passion there on both of our parts. So that's pretty cool.
That's cool, yeah.
What do you think GoldenEye has on Rotten Tomatoes?
I'd have to think this is pretty high. I'd guess 86.
It's only got 78%. Which is a bit of a slap in the face when the likes of Dr. No is in it in the 90s and stuff. And again, I think it's like the critics who review Bond films are like Bond purists, I think. And so like no one scores as high as Sean Connery's Bond, even though he's inextricably
the worst one.
The worst one. I think that GoldenEye at this time in the series is like easily the best one.
100%, yeah. GoldenEye's
easily.
Up until like this point, the films we've watched for the podcast, GoldenEye's my favorite.
Absolutely. But what is, for those who haven't seen it, what is GoldenEye about?
So GoldenEye features James Bond and Alec Trevelyan, who is Agent 006.
Played by Sean Bean.
Sean Bean, he was in this because he turned down or lost the role earlier, right?
I think he was considered at some point.
Yeah, he was
but then
considered. He
later,
probably did a screen test, and they were like, "Oh, we'll bring you back."
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, it's like a flashback to they were on a mission together, and Alec is killed, seemingly killed, I should say.
Oh.
And then, so years later, in 1995, there's this big EMP device called GoldenEye, and then it turns out that it's Alec Trevelyan 006 is behind the whole thing, and he actually faked his own death and is now a bad guy. And then his plan involves stealing money from the Bank of England and then erasing the financial records with GoldenEye.
Yeah, so GoldenEye's a satellite that can shoot a big beam down. Yeah. Yep. So this was the first Bond film to not utilize any of Ian Fleming's story ideas, so like completely from scratch.
Wow.
And the second film after License to Kill to not use one of Fleming's titles. But GoldenEye does have some significance to Ian Fleming. Do you know what it is?
He had 2 golden eyes.
He had 2. No, he only had 1 GoldenEye. No, GoldenEye is actually the name of Fleming's Jamaican estate, which is where when they do like their summits, the Bond producers have their summits where they come up with the next Bond movie. I think they go to GoldenEye for the week and stuff like that. But he named the estate after Operation GoldenEye, which was an operation Fleming was part of while working for the British Naval Intelligence as a lieutenant commander, where he liaised with the Naval Intelligence Division to monitor developments in Spain after the Spanish Civil War. A lot of words there, but there you go. What did you think of this film?
Yeah, I thought this was great. It felt like similar to Casino Royale in a way, that it was kind of like, I mean, Casino Royale's the burn the past, let it die, kill it if you have to kind of reimagining, whereas this is almost closer to Skyfall in a way. Spoilers for the next episode, but it's that forging its own path as well as like having fun little references to things like the fact that Q's still there and things like that. And it feels like a classic James Bond adventure, but at the same time it's one of the easiest to follow we've had so far. And like having another 00 agent play a feature role is like a cool thing to have. It's good world building.
About time,
because like, have we actually seen? What have we seen in the way of other 00s?
And there have been other examples, but like at the start of The Living Daylights, the 2 men who are with Bond who get killed are both 00 agents. So they have been in the series so far, but this is 100% the most prominent.
Yeah, the most significant kind of thing, and it works as like a form of world building.
Yeah.
It's kind of got like it's almost like a twist of like similar to Die Hard about like they've got this electromagnetic pulse, and you're like, oh, they can kind of do anything with it, but then it's like it's a bank heist is essentially what they're pulling off.
Yeah.
And so it's like. It like almost like flips the stakes a little bit. And so like this, it's just cool. It's full of twists and turns. It's well directed. It's well written. It's a great first entry for Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah, I feel like it takes everything a lot more seriously. Like the in comparison to, especially compared to Connery and Moore, especially Moore, who it's like the MI6 is this fun little game. Like this is like this kind of quite grounded post Cold War thriller, like and in the genuine sense of that. Like it's so this movie is so much of it is about the world post Cold War, which is where the world was at the time, and that what a cool integration of real world events into your film, because it's basically telling the story of like lost little boys. They don't know what they're doing anymore. That they were bred to be fight a certain way, and now they're in like this world that is in peace.
Yeah, it's the same kind of ideas as in Fight Club.
Yeah, it is. Right?
Yeah, it's about being disillusioned by what you were kind of grown up to believe.
And so I think this is the first real serious Bond movie. Timothy Dalton was serious as well, but in kind of like a jarring betrays the tone of the series way. I'm talking mainly about License to Kill. Then
Yeah, that's
Living
kind of what we
Daylights.
talked about last week with him being nobody's Bond, and about how like the films don't so much fit into a time period, and
Yeah.
License to Kill kind of feels like a test run for GoldenEye, which feels like again like a test run for Casino Royale.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there are so many like examples, as you sort of said, of killing the past, and mainly in Casino Royale. But there is a lot of that in GoldenEye as well. There's a lot of like progressive and subversive story decisions which hint at an evolution. It hints that that the next movie after GoldenEye will actually be a serialized continuation of the story you see here. But Martin Campbell didn't come back, and GoldenEye's Brosnan's best one, far and away. And I think I think that part of the problem with the sequels is that this one wants to be like, we're essentially rebooting, we're starting again, and there is going to be an ongoing storyline, almost like a TV show. It hints at that, but then the subsequent 3 films ignore all of these ideas, and they just become your stock standard Bond movie with changed out frills and challenges, and we wouldn't see anything like this again until Martin Campbell returned for Casino Royale. It's like he set it up for them and we're like, there you go hard, and then they fucked it up, and he was like, oh my god, now I got to come back and do it even more intensely and even more intricately, so that you can't just ignore all these things I'm changing now. Which I don't know if this is true, you know what I mean? I don't know if Martin Campbell thought these things or if this was the attitude.
Well, that's
what
we'll fucking reach out to him and find out.
But it does just, it feels like someone genuinely trying to make change in a series that desperately needs some change, and then it's ignored, and then he comes back and does it again. So maybe Rian Johnson's Star Wars trilogy that's been long confirmed but seldom news hasn't really come out about it. Maybe that'll be kind of the Casino Royale of Star Wars movies. Not that I ever want to see a Star Wars movie ever again. The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, Star Wars is like coronavirus.
We don't want to talk about it anymore.
And let's stop talking about it. But
let's live with it, let's respect it, but let's just ignore it for a bit, okay? We need to
and after being exposed to it, you need to self-isolate for 2 weeks. So and it's funny then that like DC clearly had the same thoughts that you had, that were like, fuck it, like Superman Returns didn't work, let's start a cinematic universe, get Martin Campbell on board, do Green Lantern.
Yeah, Martin Campbell has an extremely interesting career of genre-defining movies and kind of critical duds, but then also like is by no means like a household name. Like compared to like Sam Mendes directed Skyfall and Spectre. It's like, that's Sam Mendes. And it's like Martin Campbell feels like is almost operates in the same space of like the guns for hire that get picked for Marvel movies and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, I feel what you mean. Who directed Quantum of Solace? Mark Forster, that's right, I knew that.
Yeah, Mark Forster, World War Z.
Christopher Robbins, Mark Forster.
No, so I think it's important. We've just said, like, it makes all these exciting story decisions, but we haven't really explained what those are. Just take our word for it. No, so there are some classic qualities of previous Bond films which are present in this film. There's a pretty goofy Q gadget scene which would fit right at home in a Roger Moore film. But other elements are built upon so that the drama is actually quite compelling. You know, the conflict between Bond and Trevelyan is like deeply personal, and it's like a Cain and Abel kind of thing almost.
It feels lived in. Yes,
that's such a great way to put it. The female characters are like easily the most interesting.
They're the hottest.
And well. We will get to the sexiness of these films. Don't you worry. They're developed, well-rounded characters, and I know I'm trying to move away. I get it. The film still maintains its sex appeal with characters like Famke Janssen.
Yeah.
Is that her name? Famke Janssen's
Janssen,
Xenia.
I think it's pronounced.
Xenia Onatop,
Oh,
who
hell
kills
yeah.
her male victims by squeezing them to death with her thighs.
What a way to go.
The Brosnan films really up the sexiness. Like, these 4 films are so steamy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They are like dripping, these films, and it's downright gratuitous compared to the Connery days.
Yeah.
You know, like you maybe even get a bit of gyration with Xenia Onatop's scenes,
Yeah.
which is, I feel like, is the line in the sand between what you can show regarding sex in a PG-13 movie and what you can show. Like, you can show people have had sex, but as soon as you see some thrusting or some moaning, it's like, we got to have a conversation. And Xenia Onatop is very moany and very thrusty. I'm surprised there's never been a Bond girl whose name was like Thrusty McGee or something like that.
Thrusty McGee.
So the biggest notable shift in the series, especially when we're talking about female characters, was the casting of established actress Judi Dench as the franchise's first female M. So I don't know if we've talked about M on the podcast before. M is James Bond's boss, like the head of the MI6.
James Boss.
James Boss. Very cool. And so she's played by Judi Dench now, who you wouldn't cast if you didn't want the character to have a more prominent role in the series, because M had previously just been like actors you don't think about.
Yeah. Give me your gun and your badge, kind of.
Yeah, they're glorified plot devices in every film up until this one. You know,
they're just Bond. You have to go do this, and he goes, all right,
yeah, exactly.
off I go.
So she's a lot more prominent in this. However, her role in at least 2 of the other 3 subsequent Brosnan films feel very much like a waste of her talent. Like, it's like they were like Martin Campbell was like, we're going to make M like a central, important character to the genetic makeup of James Bond as a franchise. And then in Tomorrow Never Dies, it's like, she's his boss. And then die Another Day, it's she's his boss. And then The World Is Not Enough, it's like, she's his boss, but there is a little bit more. Look, credit where credit is due, there is a bit more. What do you think of M of Judi Dench's M? I thought she kicks ass in this movie.
Yeah.
So
it
cool.
is. I mean, my first introduction to Bond was that Judi Dench was M. You know, she's my M.
She's your M.
Yeah, and so this was like, it was one of those things that I, not for this podcast, but I was surprised to learn that M existed before Judi Dench, and that it used to be a man, you know?
Yeah.
Because that character to me seems so intrinsically linked to being an older British woman, specifically Judi Dench. Like, it's a cool dynamic that you have this, like, the serial womanizer who answers to a woman for
well, exactly. And this is what I'm talking about with GoldenEye being the kicking, you know, rocking the boat of the established franchise. And it's, you know, Barbara Broccoli's now in control of the franchise, so a woman is now leading this. So quite literally, it's a womanizer answering to a woman. If Barbara Broccoli is the god of the James Bond universe. And there's a scene in GoldenEye where we first meet M that is like the let the past die line of dialogue in GoldenEye that, like, people were like, holy shit, she's speaking to the audience, where you first meet Judi Dench's M, and she tells Bond, she's like, I know you don't like me, I don't like you, and she tells him that she considers him a sexist, misogynist dinosaur and a relic of the Cold War.
Yeah.
Fuck, that's a good line. It's so cool. It's like, imagine being like one of the, like, old men that really loved how, like, gross the old James Bond movies.
Sean Connery watches this film.
Yeah, and he's like, what the fuck is going on?
And then he just, like, hits the woman next to him.
I hesitated saying fuck before, just because I should mention this. I am going to be guest starring on a podcast that is coming out on Wednesday called Kaiju Weekly, Quick plug for it now, and I was not allowed to swear on it, so I
Oh,
hesitated
really?
saying fuck because he didn't say. It was like, oh, it's a PG show, and I was like, sweet, I won't swear.
You're like, yeah, fuck you, dude.
Yeah, fuck you, dude. So go check that out. It's me and a guy named Travis from Mississippi talking about Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. It comes out on April Fool's Day, but it is real. The April Fool's joke is that he made me watch the movie. I love the dynamic between M, Judi Dench, and Pierce Brosnan, and M and James Bond.
Yeah.
But again, it feels like this is forgotten in the sequels for the more traditional dynamic, and we wouldn't really see M utilized as well as this until Skyfall. Like maybe Casino Royale. Brosnan in general certainly centralizes her a lot more, but like M is the Bond girl in Skyfall, essentially. If you want to use, appropriate that term for feminism.
AJ just did a black power salute.
It was a solidarity symbol. I didn't. But as I said, the fact that we're talking about M for what feels like the first time in the James Bond podcast series is a testament.
It's because we're a couple of feminists, dude. We only talk about characters.
Couple of cool
women.
Cats. So contemporary critics responded really well to the film, with almost everyone feeling like Brosnan was a better Bond than Dalton. One who felt more modern and mature, but had lost his innocence. So,
oh, that's sad.
Do you have any more thoughts on GoldenEye?
No, just that, like, this would be an acceptable place to pick up the franchise if you were watching for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just do it. Yeah, do not watch the other ones at all. Yeah, I know. I really like this movie. I really like the characters. The actual Bond girl who isn't Xenia Onatopp. I can't remember her name. Because her name isn't like a sexy pun, so I didn't commit it to memory. She's like her story is introduced in an interesting way, and she's an interesting character. Alan Cumming is in this film. He's been a previous.
That's
MVP
right. Oh my gosh,
before.
yeah. Can we talk about that for a second?
He plays Boris.
What a waste of Alan Cumming. Like,
You don't seem to think he's terrible. I think he's fine at it.
Alan Cumming appearing in a Bond film is like, oh, fuck yeah, awesome. And then he's playing this, like, German computer hacker.
He's Russian.
Whatever.
It's set in Russia. What are you talking about?
I'm sorry. Yeah, and he's like, and it's just like, oh, okay, we just get Alan Cumming and like a fourth tier character in this film doing a silly accent.
There are so many characters in this film, though, and it feels like quite a mosaic of plot. It's cool.
Tessellation.
Yeah. All right. Tomorrow Never Dies, or does it?
Yeah, it does. Oh.
1997, directed by, this is a fun name, Robert Spottiswoode.
Where is it?
Do you know that? Where has it gone?
I think I did notice that there are new credits, and it made me giggle.
And before you ask, yes, it is the same Robert Spottiswoode who directed Turner and Hooch and Stop or My Mum Will Shoot.
Nice. Very cool.
What do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
What did the last one have? 78?
78.
72.
It's got 57. Quite a dramatic drop, but I think this is a 57% movie.
Yeah.
I think that's an adequate, like, how good is it out of 100? It's 57. It's better than half, It's better than 50%.
Yeah. I guess going off, like, half being good, but, like, when you get to, like, using Rotten Tomatoes thing being below fresh.
Yeah, I feel like it's just below fresh.
Yeah.
What is this movie about?
Sorry, just yawning because you were boring the shit out of me.
Oh my god.
There's like a British warship sinks in China, and Bond set to investigate it. And then he meets up with so there's this like media mogul who's Jonathan Pryce. Elliot
Carver. Yep.
And his like current squeeze is a former flame of James Bond's. And so she's one of the Bond girls. She's the one that dies. Because one always dies. But then he encounters a Chinese agent called Wei Lin, and they team up to take down Carver.
Yeah, so Carver's plan, he's got a newspaper called Tomorrow, and the kind of main thrusty McGee of the of the villain's plot is that he is creating the news so that he'll have the first exclusive story. So he sinks ships in the ocean so that he can be the first to have a story about the ship sinking.
Yeah.
And he's very rich. There's he reminded me of Dr. Doofenshmirtz from Phineas and Ferb. Okay, well he's Elliot Carver feels a lot more cartoony than the rest of the movie. And there's a scene right at the start where he talks about he's like, get the president on the phone and tell him that if he doesn't do what we say, we'll release a video of him with a cheerleader. And then after he does what we say, release it anyway. And it's like, okay, this feels like something Dr. Evil would say.
It's a very 1997 bad guy.
Yeah, yes. So what did you think of Tomorrow Never Dies?
Well, yeah, Tomorrow Never Dies is interesting because it is like the bad guy's plan is so cartoony, and the film does have some really good stuff in it, but on the whole, it's closer to the kind of you're more like when Moore and Connery got to the end of their run, middle/end of their run, how they were churning out very middling kind of films. It's one of those, but with some good stuff in it.
Yeah, I agree. I think I used to remember this film as the okayish film of the Brosnan era. I think it has somewhat grown on me. I think I was maybe a little too harsh on it. The action sequences are just real top-notch, but the story's like whatever. And I think there's such an attempt with this movie to be something different, and yet it becomes one of the most stock standard James Bond movies of all. Like there's no rogue agent or villain from Bond's past. It's just him doing a mission. It's
the Mission Impossible 2 of the...
Well, it's not, but thank you for planting the seed early for us to talk about that. Part of me wants to say that the villain's diabolical plot, Elliot Carver's plot to control the media, feels kind of off-brand for a Bond movie. Like, these movies usually cycle between topics like nuclear bombs and double agents and the war.
This film being set between a double agent film and a nuclear bomb film.
Yeah, and this is about the media.
The news?
The news? There's no other James Bond movies that are about this. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just feels like... Do you ever watch The Wire?
Not really.
The last season of The Wire is about them... faking a serial killer so that the media picks it up and they get more resource within the police force to fight crime by faking a serial killer. Like they find crime scenes and set it up to look like there's an MO and stuff. But not the rest of the Wire is so grounded and isn't theatrical at all. And so it kind of feels like that to me, like this idea, and it's also about newspapers. Maybe that's why I didn't remember. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no other James Bond films that are about something like this.
Yeah, I guess I got more out of it because, like, working in the news, like, I work for people like Elliot Carver.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, in a way, this film is, like, weirdly prescient. Like, it's essentially about the detrimental effects of fake news, right?
Yeah.
In 1997. Like, in a way that is blown out to be way more melodramatic because he's creating the news, but it's fake news, and Elliot Carver is like a Steve Jobs, Rupert Murdoch kind of villain.
He's very Steve Jobsian.
Yeah, and was Steve Jobs a presence in 1997?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Not as much as he was in like 2005 though.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
like Elliot Carver has like the black turtleneck and the profile front on profile shot and stuff, and I feel like Steve Jobs wasn't that, like, people knew who he was, but he wasn't that kind of symbol that we think
pretty
of
well
about.
known.
Okay, all right. I don't know if this will make sense. I did
sit
Richard.
Down and make you watch Steve Jobs the movie.
Yeah.
So
that's what I was basing this off, as I didn't think 1997 was that. Anyway, I don't know if this will make sense, Richard, but Tomorrow Never Dies is such a PlayStation 1 movie. Do I need to explain more, or do you know exactly what I mean?
Let's just move on.
I don't want to talk about it. No,
Yeah. Go on.
it feels like it's made for the PS1 movie adaptation, because there was one on PS1.
Right, yeah.
Like there's long grey hallways. Like the movie is essentially like a bunch of set pieces strung together in fun locations with sort of a plot at the start and a plot at the end. You know what I mean? It feels like it's made so that the PlayStation 1 adaptation of it is going to be a good time. You know?
Yeah, and it's like, not going to be. Do you know, is the PlayStation 1 game a good time?
Apparently it is not, but I can visualize it. I can see what it would look like. I feel like grey is the easiest color to render on a PlayStation 1 for some reason. And like the climax of Tomorrow Never Dies takes place on the stealth ship, and it's everything's metal, everything's dark and dingy and grey. And I think this is kind of indicative of where we are in time when in 1997 when Tomorrow Never Dies came out, and we talked about this on our Mission Impossible series, where like each Mission Impossible film kind of feels extremely indicative of the time period it came out in, which is why Mission Impossible 2 is the only bad one, because it came out in 2000 when no fucking movies were good. like they were all the same sort of thing. Tomorrow Never Dies and all four of Brosnan's films feel so specific to the year they came out in, which is a much smaller frame of time than Mission Impossible as a series. But Tomorrow Never Dies feels like the spiritual interim between Mission Impossible 1 and 2. Like it has the espionage kind of confidence of Mission Impossible, but it does feel like we're creeping up on that infamous turn of the millennium futurist cheese that dated every release between like 1999 and 2003, except for The Matrix. The Matrix is like the one beacon of light in this time period for action movies. Like, and you know, by 2000, and we'll see it in Die Another Day, everything's shiny and chrome, right? Everything is like futuristic. It's got this color palette, and Tomorrow Never Dies isn't shiny and chrome, but it is metallic grey. So this is pretty nice. So any more thoughts on that? I've got a new little section here that could be fun to talk. It's sort of talking about titles, but not as much.
Well,
I'm
just so randy for this new section. I just want to hear what it is.
Okay, so one of the things that's really cool about tracking the James Bond movie titles is seeing what they do when they run out of books, right? And well, they didn't even run out of books technically, but just the way that there's history to every title for it. And so one of the potential titles for Tomorrow Never Dies was Tomorrow Never Lies, referring to the newspaper, which ironically does lie. This was faxed to MGM, but through an error it became Tomorrow Never Dies, which MGM found so attractive they insisted on using it. And this was the first title to not have any relation to Fleming's life or work or James Bond as a you know.
Yeah, I kind of like Tomorrow Never Lies, because it could be like, it'd be something, you know, the villain says.
I think he does say it. I think he says, or it's written on one of the newspapers.
It's somewhere, yeah. Because also there's like Pulp did a theme song for the film that wasn't used, and it's like they released it later, and it's called Tomorrow Never Lies.
Right. Nice. So the role of Elliot Carver was initially offered to Anthony Hopkins, because of course it was.
But they gave it to his Pope friend.
He declined in favour of The Mask of Zorro, and guess who directed The Mask of Zorro?
Martin Campbell.
It all comes back. One way or another, Martin Campbell detracts from the Bond movies he's not working on. Any more thoughts on Tomorrow Never Dies?
Yeah, who do you want to just talk about who does play the the villain?
Jonathan Pryce.
Because it's not Malcolm McDowell.
I thought it was Malcolm McDowell for years, and I told you Malcolm McDowell plays the Bond villain. Because you were talking to me. What were you talking to me about? You're talking to me about how you think it's stupid that we put so much emphasis on who plays a Bond villain. And you were like, there's such... What did you say? You're like, there's
I
such
said, like, you know, people go, oh, they'd make such a perfect Bond villain. But it's like, Bond villains aren't really, like, that big a deal. Like, there's only across 25 films, there's only like a handful of actors or memorable villains, I think. To be
I
fair,
think they're all
like,
trying to be.
yeah, Sean Bean and Jonathan Pryce do it quite well. And I think, yeah, maybe it is just like a thing of like these actors are coming from time periods that I'm aware of. Like, maybe Drax and Moonraker was the biggest star in the world at the time, but
yeah.
yeah,
And
who
so
knows?
after you told me this, I was like, Malcolm McDowell's and Tomorrow Never Dies, and you're like, oh, he'd be great.
Yeah. I was like, he'd make a perfect Bond.
But he's actually not in it. It's just Jonathan Pryce, who looks like there is a soup that if you change different ingredients, you either get Anthony Hopkins, Malcolm McDowell, or Jonathan Pryce, depending how much of one specific ingredient you add to the soup.
It's like that thing you see of like cookies, and it's like a tray of cookies, and they all have something wrong with them, and it tells you. So Malcolm McDowell, Anthony Hopkins, and Jonathan Pryce all have something wrong with them, and then somewhere out there's a perfect version of that actor, and his name is Terrence Stamp.
Who's that?
Do you know who Terrence Stamp is?
I'll look him up.
He's in Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
I'm looking him up. Oh my god, is that a different guy? I can't believe. I thought that was one of the three men we were just talking about. That is crazy. This is blowing my mind.
I'm glad I was able to come up with that quickly.
What else is he in?
He's in plenty of things.
My goodness. I thought he was just Jonathan Pryce or Malcolm McDowell. My goodness. Wow. Okay. Before we move on to Tomorrow Never Dies, I do just want to briefly return to how sexy these movies are and say that Terry Hatcher, who plays the girlfriend of Elliot Carver and ex-girlfriend of Bond, who gets killed halfway through the movie, is very sexy in this one. Cool. More power to her. She later said she regretted playing the role because it you couldn't get a lot out of it. Apparently,
you couldn't what?
You couldn't. It's a thankless role. Well, no, it's not so much thankless as it is like she didn't think the character was particularly interesting or special.
Right.
And yeah, so that's a shame.
Ah.
All right, so let's move on tastefully. I was trying to think of a cool way to move on. Let's move on briskly but with class, to The World Is Not Enough, which came out in 1999, directed by Michael Apted. And do you know what else he directed?
Yeah, he's the documentarian that made the Up series.
What the hell, right?
Yeah.
What a strange director to choose. He was not the first choice, though, because apparently Joe Dante and Peter Jackson were both considered. And I feel like one of our most often repeated pieces of trivia in film franchise Fortnights is that Joe Dante or Peter Jackson nearly directed a film in this franchise. Like, I feel like this has happened so many times. It's always those two. It's always Joe Dante or
Joe
Peter
Dante's
Jackson.
Gremlins, right? Yeah?
Yeah, Gremlins and Looney Tunes Back in Action. And Gremlins 2. And Peter Jackson is The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies.
and The Lovely Bones.
Yeah. So apparently Peter Jackson was like, they ended up not going with him, and he was just about to direct Lord of the Rings. And he was like, well, Bond films usually hire smaller directors, so I guess I'm never directing a Bond film now.
What a tick.
What do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
46.
It has 52, which I think is too high.
Yeah?
I think this is lower than 52. But what is it about?
So this one is about Dr. Christmas Jones. No, so this is there's like a friend of M's is killed
Sir
by
Robert King
booby trapped money, and then yeah, it's this whole thing with like weapons grade plutonium, and they meet this nuclear scientist, nuclear physicist, Christmas Jones, which is this is the thing of this movie. This is the movie where Denise Richards plays a nuclear physicist called Christmas Jones, which is not a real first name. It's brought up once, so that at
Yes.
the end they can have sex, and he can say, "I thought Christmas only comes once a year."
Well, he doesn't just say that. He says first he says I've always wanted to have Christmas in Turkey because they're in Turkey.
Yeah.
And then not 5 minutes of screen time later, he says I heard Christmas only comes once a year. But they establish her name as Christmas maybe at the start of the the second third of the film. And then they never mention it again. It's just and they pile on 2 double entendres in a row, so that they can say her name. You know, so it's clearly they were like, what would be a good name for a Bond film? And then someone heard Christmas only comes once a year, and they had a dirty mind and was like, I know what we should name her. Like, it's so abundantly clear that that's what happened.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, this film it revolves around, as you said, the assassination of Sir Robert King by Renard, who's a terrorist who cannot feel. He got shot in the head and can no longer feel. And
Which is
Bond
a classic Bond villain kind of quirk.
Yeah. Bond is assigned to protect Robert King's daughter Electra, who had been previously held for ransom by Renard. But during his assignment,
my Alexa, which I keep next to the TV, thought was named Alexa.
Nice. During his assignment, Bond unravels a scheme to increase petroleum prices by triggering a nuclear meltdown in the waters of Istanbul. Electra turns out to be a villain. Dr. Christmas Jones is the good guy. So what did you think of the film overall?
Okay, so this is clearly another like if GoldenEye is Jurassic Park, then Tomorrow Never Dies is Jurassic Park 2, and The World Is Not Enough is very much Jurassic Park 3.
That's such a great way to put it.
And then Die Another Day is Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. We're skipping Jurassic World. But what I actually had a reasonably positive experience with this film, because for some reason, up until putting this film on, I thought Pierce Brosnan did 5 films. And so I was like, oh, fuck, oh, God. Because I had like 2 days of work in the middle of being locked down, and I was like, okay, I won't watch it on a work day, so I have to put it on now so that I have 2 days to watch his other 2 films after, blah, 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 working my whole schedule around it. So I was like, I'll put it on now. And I was like, wait a minute. There's Die Another Day. And then Sarah, I was like, did he only do 4? And I like went and Googled it, and I was like, Pierce Brosnan, most known for playing James Bond in 4 films. And I was like, my God. So this whole time, my entire life, I thought he did 5 films. And because I thought that, we've got a Bond that did it for 1 film, one that did it for 2 films. We don't have one that did it for 3. But then I was like, cool, Craig can be 4 because Brosnan was 5. And then we've got 6 and 7 from Connery and Moore. But we don't.
Yeah.
We don't.
No. It's so it is. We are just missing 3, and counting up to 7, we're only missing the number 3, which the next Bond can do.
Yeah, but because even when Spectre was going to be Craig's last film, I thought, oh, cool. Then he'll be 4, Brosnan will be 5, and then this whole time I thought he's ruined the pattern by doing the same amount as Brosnan. And like in this podcast, I've looked at a list of every Bond film so many times, and I've seen that he only did 4. I knew the names of them. But like if someone had said how many Bond films did Brosnan do, I would have said 5, and they said, okay, what are they called? And I would have named 4 and realized it, but that never happened. And so I was stoked to realize I only had 2 more films. I thought this whole time I had 3. Right. And so I said,
okay, so you were stoked that you didn't have to do the work that you thought you had to do. You weren't stoked because you realised this fun little idiosyncrasy still remained intact.
No. It was putting the film on. I was like, because I was like, oh, fuck, I still got 2 movies after this. And I was like, wait a minute, no, I don't. And so, I rode that high for a wee while during the film. because it does kind of like it's very much like in two halves, and like because Christmas Jones isn't introduced until like I think over an hour into the film,
Mhm.
and that's when it kind of goes another way. But again, it's like this just has less good stuff in it than Tomorrow Never Dies, but it's of the same quality. Like
Mm.
this, if you take away the good
Mm.
stuff from Tomorrow Never Dies, these two films would be pretty similar.
Yeah. I think this movie has some good lines of dialogue, and that's about the nicest thing I can say about
Like the
it.
Christmas
Like,
coming thing.
yeah, exactly. Like, the action scenes aren't very good. But there's a title bomb in this film. They say the name of the movie in the movie, and it's world class, Richard. It's one
Yeah.
of the best title bombs there are because it happens when Elektra has like taken Bond hostage, and she's like, "Oh, you're such a fool. You could join me." Da 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 da. And she's like, "I could have given you the world, James." And he's sort of like he's not looking at her in the eyes. He's like looking off camera down the floor.
He's
and
looking directly
almost,
at the camera, and he said there wouldn't be enough.
no, he's sort of like he goes, "The world is not enough," but he says it like he's recalling it. You know, it's not like he's just responding to her. He says it like he's like, "Well, that's right, the world is not enough." And she goes, "Foolish sentiment," and he goes, "Family motto." And it's almost like he's been, actually, it's my family motto, which it is because we saw on the Bond family crest in
Yeah.
On Her Majesty's Secret Service that the Bond family motto is "The world is not enough." It's such a good title bomb, but the best line is when he kills Elektra, and she goes, "You wouldn't kill me, James. You'd miss me." And then he shoots her, and he says the line in the script is "I never miss." Right, and that's what he says. So it's not just in the script; it is in the text as well. But the thing is that you can tell when he says "I never miss" that they would have done 20 takes, and fucking Michael Apted would have been like, "All right, do it this way, do it this way, do it this way, do it this way, try out a few different deliveries," right? Because you can so imagine there would be like a Sean Connery-esque "you'd miss me, I never miss" kind of thing in there, you know, like that's what you'd almost expect from this Pierce Brosnan delivery of the character. But the way he delivers the line is so you say Electra's line, and I'll do the gunshot and then try replicate it.
You don't kill me, you'll miss me.
I never miss. And it's like they don't go with the like ludicrous over the top one, and they don't go with like this emotionless one. They go with the like most powerful performance in the film. Like they go like, "Hey, if you were to extrapolate the way you deliver this line to the rest of your performance, you'd probably win an Oscar. Do it that way." And it's like it just feels, you know what I mean? It's such an earnest and solemn delivery that for a second you go, "Oh, him and Elektra were so close," before you remember that she's just one drop in the bucket of women that he sleeps with in these movies. It's like You Were the Chosen One from the movie
I'm
I
just
Shall
going to
Not.
quickly rewatch the scene so I can join in praising it with
Do you not remember?
I don't think I took as much notice of the performance as you did.
Oh, I thought you would have loved it. But I mean, we talked recently about how I really love like certain line deliveries.
Yeah.
And it's on paper, it's already like a fun line, but the way he delivers it is like so sad. It's got such a sadness to it. That is not at
like,
all.
Just watching it, like I was doing a split screen just then of like you talking about it and at the scene, and I like it's fine.
No, okay, maybe I'm just harping on about nothing.
Oh, no, it's pretty good. Like I'm watching it in very low quality, and you can't really see his eyes. He just has like two gigantic pixels where his eyes are supposed to be. But I imagine like if I squint a little bit, I'm like, there is sadness there.
It's a good line delivery from old Piercy Brosy Pierce.
Yeah.
So that's the nicest thing I can say about this film. The worst thing I could say about this film, as you briefly touched on, Richard, is Denise Richards, who plays Christmas Jones, is fucking terrible in this movie. Whenever I see this movie, I am staggered by how bad of a performance she gives. It's wooden. It's like, because she's not really an actress. She's a supermodel, right? So it's like it's quite a like attempt at a complicated role given to someone who, and it's not even necessarily her fault. She's just not really an actress.
Yeah.
And it makes it feel like you're watching a porno because you've got this supermodel who can't act playing a nuclear physicist. And, it's like you're watching
Named
a porno
Christmas.
about, you're watching a porno about a nuclear physicist, and it's like all these like sexy female doctors and professors walking around.
Yeah. It's funny that like she ruined one of the most prestigious franchises we've covered, but she also saved one of the worst franchises we've covered. Because I don't know if you remember this, but she plays Eugene Levy's wife in Medea's Witness Protection.
No shit! Wow. And another role, we haven't covered this on the podcast, but she's essentially the Bond girl and undercover brother.
Yeah.
And in that she does the line that's like, falling in love with you wasn't part of the plan. Was Undercover Brother after The World Is Not Enough?
2002.
You shouldn't be allowed to do that. Like, a producer should have stopped that bit, be like, if you do this, you are going to ruin like how people see your role in The World Is Not Enough. It's like when a Marvel actor gets a main role in a DC film.
Yeah.
It's like there's nothing in place that stops this from happening. So Richards was widely criticised for not being credible in the role of a nuclear scientist. Variety called her the least plausible nuclear physicist in the history of movies. Nathan Rabin, I think is a critic, panned her performance and called it so laughably awful that the film comes to a dead stop whenever she's on screen, and she was ranked as one of the worst Bond girls of all time by Entertainment Weekly in 2008.
Yeah, her terribleness... transcends the film.
Transcends the film, right? Yeah.
Without having ever seen a Bond movie, you might know that there's this actress called Denise Richards,
yes,
who plays a Bond girl in one of the film, and she's a nuclear physicist, and they make a joke about coming using her name.
The best Christmas Jones joke is she goes, "My name's Dr. Christmas Jones. I've heard all the jokes," and he goes, "I don't know any doctor jokes." That's a classy flirt. You know what I mean? Like that's a good line.
Because would this have been after Dr. Jones by Aqua came out? It must have been.
No,
right?
This is absolutely after it. Yeah. Dr. Jones permeated my childhood when I was like 4 years old. Everyone was singing.
It was 2 years after Dr. Jones.
Right, there you go. My surname is Jones, for those who don't realise.
What a good fucking song, though, eh?
Yeah. So Robert Carlyle is also in this film, and he's arguably the main villain. I feel like Elektra probably has more screen time than him, but he's like the last one left standing. I think Robert Carlyle's a great actor, but he just sucks in this. It's like they remove the essence of the actor from this character, and he just keeps mentioning about how he's already dead, and it just makes him seem like such an edgelord. Like he's like, "You forgot I'm already dead," and it's like, you just said this already. It's like someone said that to him once, and he's like, "That's cool. I'm going to say that all the time now." My favourite scene in this film, Richard, is the last time we see Desmond Llewellyn as Q before the actor's death.
Yeah, man.
He gives Bond his gadgets.
I'm off to go die.
Yeah, sort of, pretty much.
Yeah.
He gives Bond his gadgets. We meet John Cleese, who appears in the next film as the new Q, and Bond says to him, "You're not retiring anytime soon, are you, Q?" And he says, "If there's two things I've always taught you, 007, it's..." What's the first thing he says? I don't know, he says something real poignant. And then he like gets on and always have an escape plan as a second line. Yeah. And then he like slowly lowers out of frame and on an elevator. And it's like they knew he was going to die. Yeah. Like I'm presuming he had died by that point in real life by the release of the film, so they could film it and edit it in a way that was tasteful, like a nice send off. But it's
Well, do you know about Desmond Llewellyn's death?
No.
Because it's like real fucking old dude, has been in like since the 60s he's been in these films. But he actually died shortly after The World Is Not Enough premiered. So but he was killed in a car accident. He was killed in a car accident, not of old age.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
much sadder. So maybe the actor was just knew he was going to retire.
According to the Wikipedia page, it says he was not officially retiring from the role. He was training his eventual replacement, though, in the film. His eventual replacement being John Cleese.
What? Wow. So it has kind of this unintentional
Yeah.
poignancy to it. Then that's creepy, man.
Yeah.
That's creepy. That's so sad that he died in a car accident.
Yeah. That's
Oh,
crazy.
he's been so great. He's been like the only constant, and it's a good constant to have throughout the whole series.
Yeah.
Oh, that's such a
And
bummer.
when I say shortly after, it's like 3 weeks after the movie premiered. Yeah.
Wow. I got my facts wrong. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move away from tragic death corner, which is a corner I hate being in, frankly. I don't know about you. And let's return to sexy corner, Richard, which is the new problematic corner. We're not calling it problematic corner anymore because the Brosnan films are just horny as hell, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, everyone's consenting. It's fun.
Everyone's like there's age difference issues, which your mileage may vary on how problematic that is. My personal mileage is that if she's underage, it's bad.
I'll fucking
Yours
take
might be
what
different.
I can get.
And I mean, just the implied womanizing and relationship abuse, just that stuff is problematic, all off screen.
Yeah, and the like torture and
But that stuff's not like the torture stuff is like
the man's the victim, so it's funny.
no, but it's sexy.
Yeah, it is
The
sexy,
torture
man.
stuff. Like this is 1999, so this is the end of a decade, like bloated with influential erotic thrillers, right? Like we've had Basic Instinct, Wild Things, also starring Denise Richards, Eyes Wide Shut. Ones like those came out.
The
in
fucking
the 90s.
impeachment of of Bill Clinton.
Yeah, exactly. It was a horny decade,
Yeah.
and clearly this awakened the filmmakers. All of these films and all these events awakened something within the James Bond filmmakers, because The World Is Not Enough is like there's like so much like light BDSM and the psychological link between sex and pain. Like Renard can't feel anything, so he can't feel pain, but he also can't feel pleasure. And like Electra, when she's like she falls in love with him after he kidnapped her, and she's like moving an ice cube along her naked body, being like, surely you can feel this, and it's like it's and then she
like, "No."
when she no and she when she captures Bond, she puts him in a neck brace with a thing slowly pushing into the back of his neck to break his neck, and it's
It's
bondage
the
and-
photo we posted on Instagram.
yes
And there's just something very erotic about that scene. Yeah.
It's very that's the right word, erotic. The Brosnan films, especially GoldenEye and The World Is Not Enough, are very erotic films. And Richard, I wanted to ask you, what is the sexiest thing about this film?
I messaged
Which
you.
scene gave you a boner?
I messaged you during the strangulation scene that I was like, this is hot.
Yeah, it is.
There's
It is.
and it's not that I like, and it's not anything to do with any of my personal preferences around being choked or anything like that.
Yeah. I'm as mildly into bondage as much as the next guy.
Yeah. But it's just the scene is shot with a undercurrent of sexual kind of tension and
Power
energy.
dynamics. And,
it's and that's hot.
Yeah, I agree. So, last note on The World Is Not Enough. Initially, the film was to be released in 2000, and guess what the rumored title was for a 2000? What was every sequel rumored to be titled in the year 2000?
James Bond Revelations.
No, close. You're not far off.
Does it have the word revenge in it?
No, the rumored title was Bond 2000.
Oh my god!
Because everyone thought it was going to be called something 2000, or they were like Godzilla 2000.
Yeah. Oh my god! Imagine that.
Yeah, that'd suck. What an outlier. Other rumored titles included Death Waits for No Man, Fire and Ice, Pressure Point, and Dangerously Yours. Dangerously Yours sounds like Dangerous Liaisons, which is another erotic thriller.
Pressure Point's cool.
Pressure Point's cool.
I also didn't mention, but you're talking about the serialized, like how GoldenEye, tries to set up this kind of serialized thing. But Robbie Coltrane's in this. Hagrid himself reprises his role from GoldenEye.
GoldenEye, yeah, and he dies in this one.
Mm.
Very sad, but not a real death, so not actually sad. I always thought it was funny that Robbie Coltrane is in the Brosnan era, and who plays Gimli?
John Rhys Davies.
John Rhys Davies is in what is it, The Living Daylights or License to Kill? Which one's he in? And I just always confuse those actors.
Nice.
Yeah. Isn't that what a fun
that was fun
anecdote for me to struggle to get to.
That was well worth the effort it took.
Any more thoughts on The World Is Not Enough?
No, I want to move on to Die Another Day.
Well, Die Another Day, Richard, came out in 2002 and was directed by Lee Tamahori, who's a Kiwi, again, another Kiwi. And the antithesis of Martin Campbell to the Bond franchise.
Yeah.
What do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes? The answer will shock you.
100.
This is 57%, which is higher than The World Is Not Enough and the same as Tomorrow Never Dies. And fuck off, Rotten Tomatoes. What do you mean 57%? This is a 19% movie. This is so bad. What is it about? Before we get ahead of ourselves, what is Die Another Day about?
The film starts in North Korea, where Bond is on a mission, and then he's captured and tortured for over a year, to the tune of Madonna.
We'll get to it.
And what is one of the most exciting and intriguing openings to a Bond film yet?
Agreed.
And then things go downhill from there.
Do you want me to just read it from Wikipedia? Because we both...
Well, essentially, okay. The things that you know about this film. There's a guy with like diamonds in his face or something.
Yes.
There's an invisible car. Bond goes windsurfing on a tidal wave while outrunning a gun that harnesses the power of the sun to split to cut through the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea, to try and unite them.
And the third act takes place where, Richard?
In like an ice.
An enchanted ice palace. This was this film marked the 40th anniversary of James Bond, and because of that, Die Another Day includes references to each of the preceding films.
Let's go through all of them.
Halloween 2018 did that. What did you think of this film?
Okay. This is you would not be forgiven for claiming that this is you would no. You would be forgiven.
You would not be forgiven.
You would be forgiven for saying that this is the worst Bond film.
This is the worst Bond film. Please forgive me.
And maybe it is. But it's not the least enjoyable Bond film by a long shot.
I want to get to that. I want to get to that. So finish your thought. Yeah.
Well, that's my thought. Let's do it
That's
now.
your thought? Okay. So yes. So we've talked about this a few times. There is a spectrum from -10 to 10 when ranking a movie, right?
Yeah.
And 10 is Apocalypse Now, for example. 0 is
9.
Yeah, sure. 0 is The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is just a nothing movie. Like a movie I feel nothing about.
I think there's a better example out there.
There's a better example. Bohemian Rhapsody, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just for the sake of this explanation. And a -10 is The Room. So bad it's good, right? And a -10 is like level of absurdity, right? And so
it's not about like it's objectively a bad film, but you're still getting the same enjoyment out of it as you would get out of Apocalypse Now.
Yes,
but and
we found a disagreement together on I think it was Spider-Man 3, which I hate because it's boring and a bit silly, and you love because do you love it or you're fine with it?
I love it.
Okay, but you love it because of the dips into absurdity that it has.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
because at least it's fun to watch, and it's the difference between watching a really boring movie and a so bad it's good movie. But Richard, I think Spider-Man 3 and Die Another Day create this new tier for me that I can now explain why I don't like it. And it's that Die Another Day is really absurd. Like, it dips into the absurd dramatically. Yeah. However, the first 20 minutes, actually I counted it, I looked at my clock, it was the first 30 minutes.
Yeah.
The first 30 minutes of this film are so promising.
Yeah.
And that's why I hate it so much. And it's right. Spider-Man 1 and 2 are so good that, like, the worst, you said the worst thing a movie can do can be boring. Yeah. I think the worst thing a movie can do is make you think it's going to be excellent and then go full, like, stupid bad, right? That's my problem with this movie.
I get
that's why this
from.
is, yeah. That's why this is the worst one to me. I think this movie fucking sucks, and it boggles the mind that you can go from GoldenEye to Die Another Day in only 4 movies.
Yeah,
it's 4 movies. You end up at Die Another Day. The entire third act in the Ice Palace looks like a fucking cartoon. It's so
the
otherworldly.
CGI is terrible.
Oh, it's the worst thing I've ever seen, Richard. It's one of the worst looking things I've ever seen. It's like a fever dream. The parasurfing on the Arctic tidal wave is so bad. It feels like it gives my eyes cavities. And also Halle Berry is terrible and maybe my second least favourite performance in the franchise next to Denise Richards.
I do want to say though, so we mentioned the parasurfing on a Arctic tidal wave, outrunning a gun that is like a giant beam that's focusing the sun's energy.
It's GoldenEye 2.0.
Yeah, the invisible car, the diamonds in the face. Every single thing about this film, you can imagine a studio executive in 2001 when it would have been filmed thinking this is a great idea. And that's,
of course.
And that's a kind of what I love about this film, is that, like...
it's such a dramatic misfire.
Like, everything is so, like... You can imagine the high fives that would have happened in the production meetings, this film. And so, watching every single misstep this film makes and trying to think of why they thought this was a good idea. And something like, you look at Dolittle, when... Robert Downey Jr. gives a dragon an enema, and you're like, why the fuck?
Dolittle's just a mystery.
Yeah,
this is very clear.
Dolittle's a zero. And it's like, why...
Until the ending where it's a -10.
Yeah. Why would anyone think this is a good idea? Whereas this is like, it's 2002. Of course you think this is a good idea. So I do love that about it.
If Tomorrow Never Dies is a PS1 movie, then this is a PS2 movie.
Yeah.
Like, we're now in full shiny chrome phase of the new millennium. There's lasers in this movie. Yeah. There is a very dramatic overuse of slow motion, and they don't film it at 720 with a higher frame rate, so it's just a stocky, like, frame to frame slowing down. And it desperately wants to be The Matrix, which, as I mentioned before, is a film which was so influential and ruined action films for 5 years.
It's funny, though, because continuing on the PlayStation theme, Casino Royale feels very much like a PS3 game.
It's a PS3 movie.
And then Skyfall's a PS4 game.
I 100% agree.
Because, like, Casino Royale's got the, like, take itself so seriously. Look, it's almost photorealistic now, even though it's not. And it's like, look how fucking... like gritty and realistic we can make things. And then Skyfall's like, we can do that, but let's have some fun with it.
Yeah, I agree. So the way this film starts, the opening half hour is so interesting and different, and as we were talking about before, and it hits even harder when it descends into this modern worst James Bond movie. I love that he gets held captive for such a long time. It's 14 months. That's what a bold decision. The opening sequence, we'll talk about the song in a minute, but the opening sequence integrates footage of him being tortured in the North Korean prison, which is such a cool idea. Why has no other Bond movie integrated a scene into the opening sequence? I think it's probably my favorite opening sequence out of the whole series. Like, it's such a cool idea.
Yeah.
I love that what it says about Bond's character, that he doesn't give any information. Like, fuck yeah. You know, it's like, yeah, man, awesome. He doesn't break at all, and it starts out as grounded and as methodical as GoldenEye, and then
Yeah.
he gets saved. They trade the main bad guy for him, or one
Yeah.
of the henchmen for him, and he goes back into the field and he shaves his beard, Richard.
Yeah.
And when he shaves his beard, it's like a different writer took over to complete the film.
That's
It's
such
like
a good point. Yeah.
that's when it happens.
Because-
Because even the
Yeah.
even the fact that he's shaving his beard to return to the classier, dapper look is like it's not just a meaningless symbol. It's like, oh, we're just back to normal now. Like this started
Yeah.
out so interesting, and imagine if he just looked like shit for the whole movie. Imagine if this whole film was him escaping a North Korean prison camp. What a cool idea for a movie that would have been.
Yeah, and like, because even the start, like everything that's in North Korea is so like desaturated, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh fuck yeah, like we're getting like a dark and gritty film, even just the way it's colored. And then of course it gets to like super saturated and like real shitty CGI.
Makes you want to throw up. Yeah, like we never watch him deal with the trauma of being tortured and held captive. We don't see it take a toll. In fact, for a lot of the first act, he's like quietly gone rogue, but it doesn't even seem like it's that much of a struggle. Like he gets his 00 status rescinded,
Yeah.
but then he just goes rogue for 20 minutes, and then M's like, all right, come back home.
All right,
Let's prove it.
all right, come on, bring it in.
There is no better film in the franchise that highlights
There
the
is no better
struggle
film in
between.
the franchise. You said it.
I needed to put a comma there because I knew you were going to say that. There is no better example of a film in the franchise that highlights the struggle between remaining true to the roots of the series and trying to be new and different and exciting. And we've seen, like, this is like a tug of war that I wonder how much on the mind of Bond producers it actually is, if it's just something that you and I have noticed. But this is a tug of war we've seen between films, right? With On Her Majesty's Secret Service and Diamonds Are Forever did this. Skyfall and then Spectre did this. For some reason, directed by the same guy, they still tug of warred the new stuff for the old stuff.
Yeah.
But I think this is the only time both approaches are shoved next to each other in the same movie. And we go from this gripping, life-threatening prisoner of war setup, and then by the end, there's an invisible car. We're in a fucking winter wonderland that looks like the toy workshop from the Santa Claus. or like a scene from Shark Boy and Lava Girl. Like that's the level of CGI it is, like without any exaggeration. And the main bad guy is a North Korean dictator who has genetically engineered his face to look like a white British dude. What a silly, fanciful idea that is. You show me the first 30 minutes of this film and then say this is where it goes. It's like, I don't believe you. No fucking way it goes there. And I'd like to return briefly, Richard, to Sexy Corner, or should I say Horny Corner, or should I say Horner? This film is too sexy, and I mean that in a bad way. Like
Your penis
lays
exploded.
it lays on the innuendo so thick, and it's like, oh my god, give it a rest, please. I'm begging you to just say something normally. Please stop talking in innuendo. I can't understand what we're supposed to be looking at right now because all you're doing is speaking in innuendo. Everyone is so horny in this film. When we first
Just
meet
like
Jinx,
in real life, dude.
Yeah. When we first meet Jinx, who's Halle Berry's character, her and Bond are having like this horny exchange, and then he tells her that he's like, I'm just here to look at the birds. I'm an ornithologist, and she glances at his crotch and goes, "Ornithologist, that's quite a mouthful." And it's like, oh my god, you would kill me now. It's ironic, Richard, that this film is called Die Another Day because it makes me want to die immediately.
But you don't have any time. There's no time
to die. Em has to warn. So Rosamund Pike is a character in this film, and she
Her acting debut, I believe.
Oh, really?
Yep.
What a debut to then be like a pretty respected actress.
Yeah. Also, did you know? She revealed in an interview, like around the time of the Me Too movement, that when she auditioned for this film, was her first audition for a major film. The first thing she was asked to do was strip down her underwear to show them.
Wow, that sucks.
Which is very in keeping with the Bond.
Yeah, I'm not at all surprised.
Yeah.
So Em has to warn Rosamund Pike's character, whose name is Frost. Her last name is Frost. I can't remember her first name.
Jack.
When she's going on a mission solo with Bond, And the scene's supposed to be like, you are, as the target audience of a James Bond movie, you're supposed to interpret M's conversation with Frost as to be like this like cheeky, like, oh, he's such a rascal. Look, they even have to warn his partners, his like mission partner about it. But it's like she's treating him like the John Lasseter of the MI6.
Yeah.
Like, he's a bit handsy.
We don't let him work with women. You just have to...
And then they still fucking bang, and he barely has to convince her. They build her character up to be like, obviously they're gonna bang.
Yeah.
Like, of course. But they build her up to sound like she's a challenge. And I hate that I'm using these misogynistic rape culture-y terms, but that's what the movie is doing. It's not what I'm saying, it's what the movie's doing.
It wasn't me, Your Honor, it was the movie.
But then, you know what I mean? Like, it's not a struggle for him to bed her in the end. And I know...
Well, because he's a master of seduction.
Exactly. But I know that she is the bad guy, and that so she probably went to bed with him because she's trying to, betray them. But we don't know that at the time that they hook up, and Bond doesn't know it. And, maybe there's an interesting idea in Bond being a character who's so horny and sure of his own seduction skills that he never questions how this like seemingly unattainable woman immediately gives herself to him. But that's not in the film. Like, that's not part of it. He's just that good, and then turns out she's a bad guy, and it's like a two separate things. Last thing on Die Another Day, Richard, Roger Moore, who played Bond in earlier films, thank you, Wikipedia, said about this film, I thought it went too far, and that's from me. The first Bond in space. Invisible cars and dodgy CGI footage, please. I agree, Roger Moore. Yeah. I agree.
I actually, have you got dumb IMDb trivia?
No, I'm sorry.
Because
it's too much. Can I say something about dumb IMDb trivia?
Yeah.
It's too much fucking work for certain franchises. Like, every James Bond film on IMDb has about 10,000 words of trivia.
Yeah, I know.
And I cannot be bothered.
So I'm a huge IMDb trivia fan. Any movie I watch, I will go on IMDb and look at all the trivia. I actually haven't done it for any Bond film up until Die Another Day.
Yeah.
But I did find a couple of dumb IMDb trivias that I thought you might be interested in. So one is that Die Another Day is the first Bond film to not be directed by an Englishman, because Lee Tamahori is a New Zealander. Now, not only is that not true, he's not even the first New Zealander to direct a film in the franchise. Because, of course, Mike was. And I just loved a screenshot of this. So, Die Another Day, fun IMDb trivia. It's the last James Bond movie until Casino Royale 2006.
No. Yes, of course it is. Everything's the last of something until the next one.
Until the next thing.
Oh, awful.
Like, even the last of Brosnan's, like, the last time Brosnan played the character is better trivia than that.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on Die Another Day specifically before we move on?
The invisible car was cool.
No, I disagree. It's not cool. It's stupid. But I think we're saying the same thing. Okay, so Richard, let's talk about Brosnan as Bond in general. So aside from being the horniest Bond, which I don't think there's enough substance in to make a podvid about, we've kind of been putting the each Bond into a category.
We're giving them superlatives.
Superlatives, yes, thank you. And we were talking during the week, you and I, off pod, how Pierce Brosnan is almost the opposite of Dalton's nobody's Bond, right? So at first I was like, is he everybody's Bond? Is he the quintessential Bond? But what was the title you came up with?
I called him Baby's First Bond.
I think that's great. And let me say something. And
let me tell you why you thought of that.
So, I think you can watch these 4 films and get all the information you need to know about the franchise.
100%.
Because if there are 4 different tiers of quality to Bond movies, these are the 4 tiers. GoldenEye is great. Tomorrow Never Dies is fine. The World Is Not Enough is not that good. And Die Another Day is terrible.
Yeah.
But further on from that, it almost feels like each of the 4 films represents the previous 4 actors who have played Bond with their set of characteristics, right? So GoldenEye is Timothy Dalton because it's a lot more personal, like License to Kill. It's a lot darker than we've seen before. It's a lot grounded. It's trying to be a real film, which they didn't feel like they were trying to do, or they'd lost sight of before The Living Daylights, which feels the most rounded at that point. Tomorrow Never Dies is George Lazenby. It's the forgotten outlier in that it has a very different subject matter from the previous films, and it's confident in this risky approach, though ultimately no one really remembers it, and it's not really in the conversation when we talk about
and
the
it's
films.
also kind of maybe a little bit unfairly shed upon. Because there's good stuff in there.
There's good stuff.
Lazenby, even though he's great, and On Her Majesty's Secret Service, that is what it's called. Has great stuff in it. It's still a byproduct of the Connery era, and it's still not great by association.
Well, so therefore, it stands to reason that The World Is Not Enough is Sean Connery. And The World Is Not Enough is a modern retelling of a Connery-style Bond. Like, if you look at it with that lens, it's so obviously that. Like, the story structure, the subject matter, the pacing, it's about oil, it's about oil trade, which is such a pulpy global issue that all the Sean Connery ones kind of, like, established as being where they go. Both Elektra and Christmas Jones feel like Connery Bond girls. One's like an evil seductress, and the other is like a woman who's too smart for Bond, but still like Christmas Jones in characterization feels very much like Pussy Galore, not in performance, but in characterization. She's a bombshell professional who should be too good for him, but succumbs to his boyish charm.
Succumbs twice a year.
And that, of course, leaves Die Another Day, which is inarguably Roger Moore. It's turned up to 11. It's unabashedly silly, and it probably actually needs to pump the brakes. It's like silly in a bad way. Like it's being too loose. Yeah. So does that's what I had thought of for.
Yeah, no, that's good. And because I've noticed as well, like, and with this ongoing conversation of being somebody's Bond, like that each Bond feels like has a generation that feels like they belong to them. Everyone I've spoken to about these, it seems ashamed to have Pierce Brosnan as their Bond.
I think there's the least good. If every Bond has a 10 out of 10 movie, like if you were to rank every Bond's best movie as a 10, I think Pierce Brosnan has the worst good to bad ratio,
and George Lazenby has the best.
Yes, yeah, yeah, obviously.
But yeah, I think as well, like there's something so middling about Pierce Brosnan and the character. Like, have you ever seen those those things where it's like they overlay images of every person to play a character, or like this is what the average European looks like because it's 1,000 Europeans. This is like if you did that for James Bond, you get Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah, he's baby's first Bond. He's the quintessential James Bond.
He's your introduction to the franchise, and
what's James Bond? Watch these 4 movies. Never watch any others, because that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, then let's talk about theme songs. One of our favourite segments for the James Bond episodes. So GoldenEye is all the names of the movies are just the names of the songs. So GoldenEye has GoldenEye. It's by Tina Turner, and it was written by Bono and The Edge of U2. How does that go? It's like GoldenEye. Found your weakness, GoldenEye. Yeah.
It's fine. Tina Turner's a great choice for a Bond theme, and
it's very Shirley Bassey, like
to bring her in as his first theme, great idea. The song itself it's one of those ones where again it's kind of just like a pale imitation of like things that have been done better elsewhere by like Shirley Bassey and those kind of like. Although it's very sexy. It's a very sexy song, which is a perfect introduction to Brosnan.
Yeah.
great voice. Songs kind of middle of the road for me.
It's funny how they advertise it as being written by Bono and The Edge, because it's like none of that is. You can't really experience any of what you would like U2 for, and GoldenEye as a song. You know,
I think if you listen to it, you could imagine a version of that by U2.
Okay, maybe I just don't know U2 enough.
Mm.
So Tomorrow Never Dies has Tomorrow Never Dies by Sheryl Crow. This one is the one out of the four that I struggle the most to remember, because it sounds like an undercooked The World Is Not Enough, while Die Another Day feels like an overcooked The World Is Not Enough. Like the next three, I feel are the same song. It's just this one doesn't go as hard as it could. The World Is Not Enough, I think, is the best one. And then Die Another Day by Madonna, we will get to. What do you think of Tomorrow Never Dies?
Sheryl Crow is a really strange choice.
How's it go? It's like Tomorrow Never Dies. Is that it?
Yeah.
Is that the
Yeah, something like that. But it's like it's got this these like strings in it. Because Sheryl Crow is like a country artist. And so like a country Bond theme is a cool idea. Yeah, it's kind of like there's elements of it, but it's like I kind of would almost rather see give us a country song that's a Bond theme, than
Tomorrow Never Dies.
Than trying to just like shove the biggest artist right now who happens to be a country artist and just get her to do this song.
Yeah, it's not the same as like Billie Eilish doing No Time to Die though, because No Time to Die is in Billie Eilish's style. And that's almost what's wrong with it. This is like getting Sheryl Crow to be like, conform to our shaped peg in the ground, you know? The World Is Not Enough is by a band called Garbage, and this is the only song I know of theirs. And this, Richard, this might be my favourite one so far out of what we've done.
Yeah, that's great.
Podcast. The world is not enough.
Yeah,
but you can. It's so sexy. It's such a sexy song. It's so it's so smoky.
This is such a great marriage of like rock band voice and Bond theme.
It's so good. I love it.
Yeah, because they're like a I guess like grunge, probably alternative kind of. But yeah, it's like it still feels like Garbage. It's still like the band, and yeah, the lead singer is Shirley Manson. Her voice works so well with it. It's that kind of like husky kind of late night cigars and whiskey for decades will do that to your voice kind of thing. It's that kind of like loungy, sexy. Yeah, it works really well.
And it's like vaguely tragic lyrics as well.
Yeah, it's definitely up there in Bond themes.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, Die Another Day by Madonna. Now, as I said, the opening sequence, which integrates scenes of Bond being tortured in North Korea for 14 months, great idea. The song is your first indication that this movie is not going to be able to keep up its extremely high watermark that it sets. Because this song is the worst Bond song.
Okay,
this song is bad. How's it go? It's another day.
It's very electronic and
it sounds horrible. At one point, it sounds like the song's finished because one of the like techniques it uses like sharp, abrupt ends to like notes, and so you think the song's finished and nothing's happening, and then it comes back as die another day.
Yeah, if you don't think this is the worst one, turn off this podcast right now because I don't want you listening to this.
This is
it's so bad. It's so bad.
If writing on the wall for Spectre is that 0, this is that -10. This is an absurd song. Die Another Day. I think the spectrum's different from music.
Yeah, maybe. It's so bad. It's bafflingly like, and so it's interesting. Okay, talking about, because before it was announced to be Billie Eilish, there was a big hubbub about who should do a Bond theme, and it's things like Muse, like they already sound like Bond, and like something like Do I Want to Know, Arctic Monkeys, like they already all these people like, oh, they'd be so perfect for it. It's some same kind of thing. Because of Die Another Day, any fucking artist, any song can be a Bond theme. There's no there is like a house sound for what a Bond theme should sound like.
But even GoldenEye doesn't have that house sound at all, and it still kind of sounds appropriate.
Exactly.
Like,
and something like even just when talking about artists, Sheryl Crow's not a great choice for a Bond theme, but her one's fine. It sounds like a Bond theme. Madonna's whatever, she's a fine choice for a Bond theme. She's one of the biggest pop stars of all time, if not
she's
the
in
biggest.
the film.
And she's
in
film.
Die Another Day. As a fencing instructor, and it's very egregious.
Yeah.
Hello, woman who is just Madonna. You're just Madonna.
Yeah.
You have no more scenes than this. You are just a cameo from Madonna.
Yeah, and it is like, it's the most 2002 thing. I just there's nothing redeeming about this.
Die Another Day just encapsulates 2002.
Yeah.
It's the worst. It's the worst movie to be birthed out of shiny chrome new millennium stees, right?
Yeah.
And the song is just another one of the victims of that.
And also, I should point out as well, we're very patriotic here at Cult Popture. However, in my reading of the IMDb trivia page for Die Another Day, I did see that apparently Lee Tamahori did come up with the what's it called, like windsurfing, the tsunami, the tidal wave, and he apparently he came and like punched up the script and added a bunch of just like real stupid sounding shit to it.
Lee.
And one was that he was one that was cut was having like 12 women in leather cat suits chase after Bond when he leaves the Ice Palace. And that in combination with Rosamund Pike's story about being forced to strip down to her underwear in an audition. Maybe he wasn't in the audition. The directors don't always attend those things. But,
Lee Tamahori, so for those not outside New Zealand, Lee Tamahori is famous in New Zealand for directing a very significant film for Kiwi cinema called Once Were Warriors, which is this... I haven't actually seen it, but I know a lot about it. It's like this sorrowful, sad movie about domestic violence in Māori communities. It's by all accounts. Have you seen it? It's like fucking rough by all accounts.
Yeah, it's a very dark, very.
And you would think that the man who directed that would have at least some sort of respect for the woman characters. Like, if you care enough to make a film about how bad domestic violence is, you think you would also not then immediately just contribute to rape culture and like one of the underlying causes of domestic violence by making like a sexist ass Bond movie. That is crazy.
Yeah, he the film he followed up Die Another Day with was Triple X State of the Union.
No shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Also, so just on Lee Tamahori's Wikipedia page, if you go under personal life, on 8th of January 2006, Tamahori, this is under legal issues, Tamahori, dressed as a woman, was arrested in Los Angeles for allegedly offering an undercover officer oral sex. He was convicted only of criminal trespass, having pleaded no contest in exchange for other charges being dropped.
Interesting. I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah, that's a very strange thing.
What a strange man. All these elements we know about him accumulating in that.
Yeah.
Well, Richard, let's talk about titles, because we talk about titles a lot on this podcast.
Too much, I would say.
I agree. We've already talked somewhat about how these titles came to be with Tomorrow Never Lies and stuff like that. But as you'll remember from our previous James Bond episodes, I have these categories of that every James Bond title fits into. And in another way in which Pierce Brosnan is Baby's first Bond, each of his 4 films fits into one of the 4 categories.
Oh,
I've fudged one of them a bit, but I think you will let me get away with it once I explain it.
Oh, I doubt I will.
I think you'll agree. and that your want for idiosyncrasy will be equal to my want, and we'll both be happy with where I've placed it.
You're maybe underestimating my want for you to be wrong and me to be right.
That's very true. That's very true. Are you right just by me being wrong?
Yeah, you can't be right unless someone else is wrong.
So, the first category is the poetic/mysterious turn of phrase, which communicates a key idea or piece of imagery from the film. These are For Russia with Love, Diamonds Are Forever, A View to a Kill, and Tomorrow Never Dies is that, because tomorrow is the name of the newspaper. So it's a turn of phrase, but it is actually something specific to the film.
Yeah.
Next category, literally just the name of a character, setting, or prominent event or prop in the film, often but not always adjective plus noun. Goldfinger, Thunderball, Moonraker, Octopussy. Technically, Dr. No and the Man with the Golden Gun fit in this category, though they maybe are their own fifth category, but not now. And GoldenEye, obviously, is part of this category. All right, broad titles you could give to literally any of the films in the series, so they apply to James Bond and not the movie specifically. So On Her Majesty's Secret Service is probably the best example of this. The Spy Who Loved Me, For Your Eyes Only, License to Kill. I've put The World Is Not Enough in here, and this is because it's his family motto, you could call any of these The World Is Not Enough. If we're not taking into account title bombs, which we haven't before, with these categories, you could call any of these films The World Is Not Enough, with the information that that's his family motto, which you might say is too much information, but it's just as much information as knowing he has a license to kill, you know? Maybe I'm reaching. So maybe you would rather put it in the last category, which is ominous phrases which don't really refer to anything specific in the film itself, which is Live and Let Die, The Living Daylights, and Die Another Day.
I would swap Die Another Day and World Is Not Enough.
You reckon?
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't know if I agree.
Oh.
Because you could call you could call any of the films Die Another Day, but you could also call any of the films Live and Let Die or The Living Daylights.
Yeah.
So there's only 3 categories, is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
There is a difference between ones you could give any of the films in the series, though, and ones that you could give to any film. You know?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, that was fun. Love categorizing titles with you, bro. This is how we're spending our quarantine. Let's move on to the second last segment of today's episode, which is Continue the Franchise. So this is where we're going to pitch some sequels to the Brosnan era, but before that, let's go through some continuations that already kind of exist. As is often the case, Brosnan's iteration has a whole set of supplementary material, including books and video games. Obviously, most notably, and probably the most notable thing from James Bond that isn't an original novel or movie is GoldenEye 007, the Nintendo 64 game. Which actually came out 2 years after GoldenEye. Did you know that? Came out in 97. The game is seen as a pivotal release in the annals of video game history, with its pioneering multiplayer shooter functionality remaining like the gold standard today.
Yeah, I've never played it.
Well, you don't have Halo, you don't have Call of Duty without GoldenEye 007,
yeah.
essentially.
But it feels like I've missed out on a childhood.
I don't know. I've played it. I played it after my childhood though, and I was lukewarm on it. Nintendo 64, any game that doesn't have like internet connection feels like claustrophobic to me now. Like I can't get out of this game. I'm stuck in whatever is on this disc or this cartridge in Nintendo 64's case. So the game itself spawned a few sequels and remakes, including GoldenEye Rogue Agent, GoldenEye Source, and GoldenEye 007 Reloaded, which was a ground-up remake of the N64 game for the next generation of consoles, and it featured Daniel Craig's Bond, and I think him voice acting, and a cover of the theme song GoldenEye by Nicole Scherzinger. Forget about the Nicole Scherzinger thing, whatever. I find it super interesting that Daniel Craig essentially remakes GoldenEye in digital form, right? And that is not the last time that has happened, because 007 Legends, which is a PlayStation 4 game, also is like a mission from each of the 6 Bonds, but you
Yeah.
play as Daniel Craig in all of them.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I didn't realize that about it.
Hmm.
Doesn't everyone? Is that not? Didn't everyone like bring their voices back for it or something? Though
I don't. Maybe
there's
he did.
something that like most of them did their voices for, right?
Okay, well, we can look into this and maybe have a correction on the next episode if that is the case. There were rumors of spin-off series from the Brosnan era as well. Wei Lin from Tomorrow Never Dies and Jinx from Die Another Day were both written. Well, no, Wei Lin was thought to maybe she deserved a spin-off series, while Jinx was like written to be a spin-offable character.
Right. Yeah.
Which I'm so glad they didn't do. These would have acted as the Winter Olympics to the main series, apparently.
Right.
So, like, every few Bond movies, you get a Jinx movie instead.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. MGM weren't keen, though, and they pulled the plug. And this apparently really bummed out Barbara Broccoli and the other Eon producers, who really wanted to do a
Interesting.
female-led
I mean, I
spin-off.
guess that's the way to do it. Like,
and maybe that's a hint at what is to come for the future of Bond. Who are we to say?
yeah. Well, I mean, because we're getting a black female 007 in
Precisely.
No Time to Die. Yeah.
Yep. All right. What is your continue the franchise for Pierce Brosnan Bond?
Okay. My continue the franchise is let's just explore some of the ideas we had in Die Another Day again, in the same way that Spectre brings back Blofeld, and we've had fucking like half a dozen of these films are set in Russia. I want to see what a Daniel Craig or whoever the next Bond is like. I want to see that era of Bond, the way we tell stories now, explore Bond doing a mission in North Korea. I think that's such an interesting like log line for a film, is like it's the North Korea one, we've talked about like that, but let's see that fully explored. I want to see a gritty realistic Bond tortured for 14 months. I want to see every second of it. No, I want but yeah, I want to see what the way we tell stories now. I want to see a realistic character have to deal with that, and that he'd have severe PTSD. Going back into the field wouldn't be easy, but he'd have to do it for England. And so that's what I want to see.
That's really cool. And as I said before, like, just if all of Die Another Day, if it was like this bottle episode of just James Bond escaping a North Korean prisoner camp, that'd be fine. Like, people would be like, it's such a departure from the series, and it's like, yeah, but you can do that every once in a while. I mean, GoldenEye.
Yeah, you can do that 40 years into a franchise.
That's a cool idea, man. I could definitely see that working. It could be like a video game as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, my idea is I want to, specifically from the Brosnan era, but maybe further back, I want to revisit the Bond girls from previous films and just examine how emotionally damaged and they are and from being used and abused. Because it's like, I think it would be one thing if the woman he encounters in each movie, if there's kind of like an understanding that it's like, I don't really do tied down relationships, but like he kind of Pierce Brosnan at least, and I think Timothy Dalton as well, they play it like they've fallen in love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't play it like it's just another fling and some fun on the mission. They play it like they've met the woman of their dreams. It's subtle, but it is there, and I think a lot of the women respond in a similar way. I think the love interest in The Living Daylights, as we talked about in the Dalton episode, is like, how did they break up? That sounds so sad. Like, they were such a she was such a nice person, and I kind of feel similar about a lot of the Brosnan girls, that it's like they seem to form genuine connections in each of the Brosnan films. I'd say it seems like they form genuine connections with each other, and then they're just gone without a trace in the next film.
So what's the what form is this taking that you're
What do you
suggesting?
reckon? Is it a movie or is it more?
I reckon it's like a like Carol Brown by Flight of the Conchords.
Oh yeah.
It's a chorus of ex-girlfriends singing all of James's problems.
Yeah. There you go. Right, that's my continue the franchise. Which I thought of last night when I was just thinking about how like he saves Jinx in Die Another Day because she's like freezing to death, and he picks her up and runs and jumps into like a warm pool so that like to put her body temperature back up, and he's so concerned, Richard. He's like, "Come on," like, and it's a it's a good
laid.
It's a good performance if Pierce Brosnan is being given the direction you are in love with her, but it's not a good performance necessarily if it's like you're gonna probably leave her in a few days. Yeah. Okay, so now our final segment of the show, Richard, is Rank That Franchise, where we go to our Letterboxd ranking on letterboxd.com/cultpopture/list/FFF-ranking. And we are going to place GoldenEye and the Pierce Brosnan, like GoldenEye will represent the Pierce Brosnan films. Now, Live and Let Die and the Roger Moore films are placed at 43. Timothy Dalton is placed at 44, so exactly one after Roger Moore, with Sean Connery somewhere in the dregs down below. We don't. It is around Air. It's better than Airbud. Now the question is GoldenEye so good that it's better than all of Moore's combined? Or all of
here's what I'm thinking.
Dalton's combined?
When we made this list, we famously created a Nymphomaniac constant, because Nymphomaniac Volume 1 is one of the best films we've watched for the podcast, and Volume 2 is awful. And so they cancel each other out, and it's almost the 10 to -10 thing that Nymphomaniac cancels itself out and becomes a perfect 0. So if a franchise is more good than bad, we can put it above that. If it's more bad than good, we can put it below that. This is the same. This has everything. Like, this is a perfect, like, view in quality. It's a perfect parabola in quality. It's like,
we have another constant.
The best one and the worst one, and then two that are like either side of good.
You're fucking right. It's poetry, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so that would mean it's better than Moore and Dalton with that logic.
I think so. I think its highs are higher, but its lows are definitely lower.
So is it the only film, the only franchise between Roger Moore and Nymphomaniac is Twilight? So Richard, I ask you, are the Brosnan Bond films better or worse than Twilight?
I think it needs to go right next to Nymphomaniac.
Is it better than Nymphomaniac?
Because they're the same, but I'm trying to think of...
Well, one has to be better or worse. Yeah. What's worse, Nymphomaniac or
Nymphomaniac
Brosnan?
Volume 1's probably better than GoldenEye.
I agree.
Yeah.
So it goes between Nymphomaniac and Twilight.
Yeah.
What a strange list. Nymphomaniac, Brosnan Bond, Twilight, Moore Bond, Dalton Bond.
The Santa Claus.
and then the Santa Claus. and then you go all the way down, and Dr. No is at number 80. So Connery Bond is between the Sisterhood of the Travelling Pants and Airbud. I know it just annoys so many like old-timey film snobs. All right, so that's where it's placed. It is currently at number 42. Wow, that's a fun number for all our nerdy friends.
Hitchhiker's Guide fans out there.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, so let's wrap this bad boy up, shall we?
All right, well, thank you for listening, everybody. Go check out the episode of Kaiju Weekly that I'm guesting on. It'll be out in a couple of days. And come on and get on the Cult Pop Shop bandwagon. And
come on and slam and welcome
to the jam. That is Cult Pop Shop on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. I didn't write this down. I said I was going to write it down. Patreon, www.patreon.com/cultpopshire. Wherever you get your podcasts, we're there. We've also got the Cult Pop Shop podcast YouTube channel if you prefer to listen to podcasts on YouTube. We have a Discord. Please join the Discord. We would love you to come along and chat with us. We met a new friend friend on the Discord who joined this past week. What was their name? Jellyfish or something? I'm gonna look it up. So come along to there. You can chat with us. You can. We've talked. We just mentioned before that we might be doing some kind of fun quarantine screening.
Let us know if you have any ideas. We've got some of our own, and expect those within the next 4 weeks when we're quarantined.
Jelly Fang is the new
That's right.
member. So welcome to
Jelly Fang.
Welcome to the cult, Jelly Fang. And yeah, please do all those things I just said. Follow us on Twitter at Cult Pop Show and Instagram at
Send us little kisses.
Little kisses. Richard, I thought you only came once a year.
I don't know where you're getting your information from.
I can see you coming right now.
Aww, AJ, that is got to be one of the sweetest endings to an episode of film franchise Fortnights I've heard in my entire bloody life.
Yeah, well, don't get used to it, alright?
Hello, thanks for sticking around till the end. This is a little wee cheeky post-credit.
The post-credit scene, Richard, I'll be honest, I'm raw dogging the microphone right now. I've got no pop filter.
Oh my gosh.
Filter. So apologies in advance for that. Yes, so this is our Patreon post-credit sequence, where if you donate either $5 or more at www.patreon.com/cultpopshire, you can give us a little subject to discuss in this our post-credit sequence. So, Richard, today's post-credit sequence comes to us from Michael Baston. He asks, if you had a sports movie, what would it be about? Very interesting question, as neither of us are particularly sporty.
Yeah.
Though I feel you know more about sport than I do, though you still probably wouldn't say you're a sporty person.
I would not say I'm a sporty person, but I would say I'm a lot sportier than you.
And that's important.
I would. So the question is, if I had to make a sports movie, what would it be about? And there is an annual film competition in New Zealand called the 48 Hour Film Festival, where you are given a genre and you have to make a film in that genre. And I've always said that if I got sport, I would make up a sport. And it would be like, taking these cliches of sports movies, and applying it to some nonsensical sport. Every time you get a glimpse of what the sport actually is, they would not go together. Either that, or I would make the sport be like Tiddlywinks or Jacks or something like that. And you've got these life or death like college scholarships that you're fighting for, but you never fully understand what the sport is. Because to me, not only is that really funny, but it's also like a commentary on like how it doesn't matter what the sport is. What matters is the message and the kind of overall theme of like the underdog and teamwork and things like that.
Yeah, I'm going to exploit a loophole in Michael's question, which word for word verbatim is, if you had to make a sports movie, what would it be about? What would my sports movie be about, Michael? It'd be about people.
Yeah, nice.
It'd be about friendship or something like that. Because that is infinitely more interesting to me than sport.
They're my dumb fucking movie.
All right. Thank you, Michael. We'll see you guys next time.